Yo, Joburg, welcome to episode 275 of GI Joburg. My name is Steve. We're talking crossovers tonight. I'm not alone, however. Once again, it's Paul, Deadly Pencils. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Steve.
Wow, those pencils really are deadly. And the love and scoopful, it's Rob. I think, if my computer catches up and actually allows him in.
Feedback.
Okay, I think I tapped it too many times. Okay, Paul, you tap it.
I'll tap it. And it's Rob.
Here I am again, guys. Hello. I see it's
Oh,
a
loving
couple
scoopful.
of back starts, back farts.
My apologies,
But we're
Rob.
here
I
now.
mean, my computer is operating so poorly that I press something, wait a while, and then maybe it's responded.
Well, I have experienced this live, everyone. We during our Greek unboxing, we had a fantastic experience, and coming up very soon, I imagine, will be another fantastic live experience that Stephen and I did together. And yes, his computer is boo boos. It's doo doos. It's sleeping.
Oh, it's bad news for all involved. Anyways, pretty soon I'll have two very technically minded individuals at my beck and call, and they are going to do a
Ooh.
factory reset of my machine. Is that
Tech
right, boys?
support.
Tech
Yes.
support.
Hell
Tech
yeah,
support is
we're gonna
coming all the
fix
way from
it.
Johannesburg. Mm-hmm.
That's how we roll.
Fix it. Soo-doo-doo.
Yes, the cat's out of the bag. We will be reunited by the next time we record a podcast. Good times, good times.
Absolutely
Paul
wild.
arrives on Sunday. What
How
time?
dare.
Nobody knows. Are you guys
No
driving
one-
in one go, or are you going to do a stopover?
One go, yeah. We'll go one go on
Whoa.
Saturday. So, yeah.
Whoa.
Wild.
No sleeping
Speaking
for
of
that.
wild, we have Mr. Tim Wild in the house tonight, and Gaz is
Ooh.
joining him. Who else is there? Sound out in the chats if you are listening. See, there are
Yeah.
four sets of eyes on us. We are talking crossovers in this episode, and
Oof.
I actually am going to not be taking lead on this topic because Paul came to us with a very interesting hypothesis.
Deadly
He
pencils.
believes, and let me put words in his mouth because I know if I
Do
give
it.
Paul the mic too soon, he'll just I don't know, fall apart on the spot,
Diverge.
right? Anyways, I
diverge.
do want to set you up at the moment, Paul. I want to say that Paul believes there are more similarities between G.I. Joe and Transformers than there are differences. That is the point that he will try to
No way.
prove tonight on G.I. Joburg. And Steve and Rob will try and disprove that. Or at least I will.
Yeah.
And you'll be the swing vote, Rob.
Yeah, I'm gonna be
Hello,
sure
Jimmy.
based on your
Jim Godfrey's in the
arguments.
chat as well, joining the
Which
Bird Force.
wins?
Good to see you, buddy. All right,
Good to
so
see you too.
Paul, dude, take it away.
Blow us away.
Why are
Cool.
the
Well-
robots in disguise like G.I. Joe?
Well, first up,
before I
though,
jump-
Paul
be-
wants to
yeah.
catch us up with life.
With life. No, I just want to quickly, before we get too hot and heavy in this, I just want to throw out a happy birthday to Mauler Joe. It was his birthday the other day, and this week. So I just thought, hey, it would be cool if he gets a GI Joburg shout out because he has contributed quite generously to the show with both his time and his creation. So Joe, if you're listening, thank you, man, and happy birthday. I hope it was a totally rad one.
What a
Many
man! What
happy
a
returns,
man!
Big Joe.
It
Have
is
a good
also
one.
cool to see that he had some
Yeah.
Gundam kits in
Ooh.
one of his recent pics on Facebook. So, yay!
He probably rips them apart to make better maulers.
Okay, so coming
Take
back
that,
to
Gundam.
the Transformers GI Joe, should I say likenesses and unlikenesses? So what's been happening, for me, is I've just been, checking out all those toys that are coming out and getting excited about Transformers as I do, and then telling myself not to buy them as I do, and I've just been going through GI Joes as we do, and I kept noticing, and it's kind of obvious. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you guys have noticed this before, but a lot of the specialties that the Transformers have, the GI Joes also have, and it's kind of I kind of feel that like sometimes they're interchangeable, and I'm going to put a lot of my focus on the cartoon here, specifically because, well, for starters, they both use some of the same soundtrack, which is hilarious. But I really feel like they're the same property in a lot of ways, because you've got Optimus Prime as the leader, okay, and then you've got, okay, in the cartoon it's not so much Hawk, but it's kind of Hawk, but it's more Duke. So Duke is kind of the Optimus of GI Joe, and then we have a bookshelf on the screen, and like just if you start looking at that, you take characters like Ratchet, and you've got Lifeline, and you take Bumblebee, and you can equate Bumblebee to, well, quite a lot of things actually. But the main thing that's like tweaking me onto this whole thing, the thing that like started it all off, was Mr. Gary V. You posted a pic on Facebook the other day about some Bumble Strikers that you got the other day, and I just looked at this and I was just like, why the hell is this just like, is GI Joe and Transformers just, why have they never just been the same property from the beginning? Why didn't they just make them the same thing, like the same world, the same universe? Why didn't they just do that? Because it almost feels like the writing team was like, okay, we'll do this one. We need a story for these cool robot toys, so we're just gonna do this, and we also need a story for these cool army toys, but we make it like a little bit different, and we'll just reap in all the money.
But the toy lines
So
had such distinct origin stories. G.I. Joe was a revitalizing of an old Hasbro property, in-house property, and being brought into the modern age and brought down to the scale of Star Wars figures. Whereas Transformers was like a mishmash of Takara and various other sort of robot lines from the East.
yes,
So like
put it under an umbrella and then tied together
I
with a
don't
story.
think anyone in the Hasbro offices in 1982 to 84 thought that these two toy concepts should occupy the same world.
It's just,
I mean,
it's
at
just
least
like,
not at that stage.
I mean, you've even got like the same voice artists for like both of them, for the
Well, of
cartoons
course
and
you
things.
do,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
Sunbow
it's the
had the
same
same
pool.
actors on the call sheet. Like the if my time in the hallowed halls of voice acting is anything to go by, like the fact that there are two concurrent productions running just allow the voice casters to save time by doubling up. It's like, okay, well, you're doing G.I. Joe. Well, you can also do these three voices for Transformers. Phew. Okay, that fills a gap. It's not necessarily like a genius masterstroke to have these guys. You're not seeing some kind of hidden converging lines here. You're literally seeing the
Yeah, no,
practicalities of like rush casting in the day. It's like these are the people that deliver on this show. They can be counted on in the other shows. And even though like some of these cartoons weren't produced by the same studios necessarily or had the same properties, you're still dealing with the same talent pool and the same casting directors. So everybody knows everybody in Tinseltown, right?
but it's weird. It's like, it's almost like by subconscious design. It's like, it's not like they sat, like you said, it's not like they sat there and went, okay, we're gonna do it this way. It's just that it just turned out that way. And I've almost feel like it automatically, that when both writing teams, or in some cases the same writing team, were trying to come up with plots for one or the other show, they started like just kind of writing something that maybe it's something that didn't pass for GI Joe. They just changed it around for Transformers. Although for that, I would need a way more extensive knowledge of the Transformers cartoon to actually be able to delve into that. But I'm more looking
Yeah, I
at like
totally
the
wanted to
toys.
call your bluff there.
Yeah.
So
So
your
like,
your argument is premised on the fact that like GI Joe had a leader and Transformers
no,
had a
no,
leader,
no.
and GI Joe had a medic and Transformers had a
They
medic.
all, well, they have the same archetypes. That's the thing. So
Yeah.
they both have a medic. They both have somebody who's in charge with somebody else who's trying to knock the person off, that's in charge off their like throne. They've both got
Mm-hmm.
like mysterious characters, sort of pseudo mystical characters, but within their own shows, like how Soundwave is kind of, Soundwave and Shockwave are kind of mystical in their own way. They do use technology, but that's like magic. you know, if you have to translate it to like Spirit and Storm Shadow, that kind of vibe. I feel like a lot of those characters exist, and in a weird way, I kind of like, it's got me thinking, and this is like the wild card. This is the thing I didn't tell you guys about in preparation for the show.
Ooh.
And kind of where the I want a lot of the
Wild
quick fire
cards.
questions to come. So instead of like, so there's gonna have two phases. The first phase is gonna be like, if hypothetically we made a GI Joe cartoon and the Transformers were part of that GI Joe cartoon. Never mind it not being not a crossover. Don't think of it as like Transformers existed and GI Joe existed. Now we're smashing them together. Like, think of them as like only one property. So it's either Transformers with GI Joe characters in them, which is very much like the movies, to be fair. Or you take GI Joe and you've got Transformers in there as part of, you know, part of the world. You know, like how vehicles in Mask transform, like the same kind of thing. So they're in that universe. So like, what characters do you think would make a compelling Transformers, or should I say GI Joe show, if there's transforming robots in it? Like, who would be your core team? Do you think we would have like a whole different diversity? Do you think we would get do you think we would get Ratchet and Lifeline if that was the case? There's lots of like possibilities. So yeah, and the only person who hasn't given me any kind of pushback yet is Robbie, and I'm curious to hear what Rob's thoughts are. And like, are you crazy, Paul? Why are you crazy?
Well, they've definitely, I mean, crossed over successfully before. So I mean, it's not impossible that they would work together quite well. And I think
Right.
definitely.
No, you're right. Carry on.
You're agreeing with me that I'm
Yeah.
right, and that I'm agreeing with you with those points, because I mean, yeah, it was a cool thing. I mean, they're essentially both war shows. You know, the GI Joes, and then they're just robots, but they're fighting a war on another planet, in Transformers. So definitely there can be crossover in that they would team up to kind of like battle their enemies, even if I think the GI Joes weren't directly affected by the Decepticons. They would definitely still help out the Transformers if they needed to be able to kind of like take down whatever Decepticon threat there is. And it would make sense for them to become the vehicles that the GI Joes and the Cobras already use. I mean, that could be where their vehicles were always came from. Is that, you know, they were very much just, you know, kind of like what's the word? Foot soldiers. You know, they were just like kind of like soldiers. But then they kind of got this amazing technology through teaming up with the Transformers, and then basically the entire Toyland would always have been the vehicles were the Transformers, and they would transform into, you know, a Havoc or a whale or whatever. So I think definitely
that could have been a fun gimmick. Yeah.
Oh, that would be absolutely fantastic. If they had kind of realized, oh yeah, these things are basically very similar, and could have made that crossover happen. Because I mean, that's a money making potential that you've just completely lost out on.
And then the second like line, the second kind of line of thinking, this is the one that actually excites me the most. You guys, listeners, and you guys here on the show, you might remember Rob's episode where he had this like alternate version of GI Joe where Scarlet and Snake Eyes were like the big bad, and Destro was kind of leading the GI Joes. You know, and it's like kind of, in my mind, it was kind of like an Iron Man kind of concept. He wore like a suit of armor akin to like how Iron Man would do it, and it had a very strong sort of what's the word I'm looking, or it had a very cool like vibe to it. It wasn't just like alternate GI Joe. It had like a cool out of this world kind of multiversal quality to it that I liked a lot, and it got me thinking of like concepts and things. And I've been trying to push for an episode where we talk about this, but I feel like we'll get to that episode one day, I hope, anyway. But this leads me to the crazy content, or the crazy idea here is, what if the GI Joes were like robots and not GI Joes? Like, how would you guys imagine that? What would your team be? Like, what would your team be? You could, like, maybe let's pick 3, Okay, and I'll give you guys like I'm speaking like this so I can give you guys a chance to think about it. And what would they transform into? You know, if the Transformers were the GI Joes, so you had Scarlet that transformed into an ice cream truck, and like they fought. How would it like work in your brain? Like, what would your story then be? You know, like, yeah.
Well, we got a
That'd be
good
kind of
suggestion
crazy.
almost preemptively out of the gate by
Ooh.
Zantara, saying that I can't wait to hear how CoverGirl can transform into an ATV. Yeah, nice. And also the fact that if GI Joes could transform into vehicles, then all the GI Joe drivers would be out of a job. Very, very astute observations, both of them. I guess I always like the idea of the more outlandish GI Joe vehicles being adopted as alt modes. So I definitely try and work in something as silly as the Havoc. But that seems like a very Dukish kind of vehicle. Though at the same time, Hawk was released at the same time in his general's outfit. So maybe the Havoc as Hawk, as your kind of Optimus Prime character. That's my first suggestion. Rob, do you want to swing for the fences and drop one into the pot?
Perceptor.
Of course. Well, no, you're asking recasting GI Joes as transforming robots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think Rob's still muted. So maybe
I
he's talking at
think
us.
Maybe he's talking to someone else. Maybe he's
No,
got
no,
company.
I was no, I do not have company. I was I keep forgetting that I muted it on anyway. I think you could even do like Ace would become the Sky Striker. I think that's a really cool one.
Oh, geez, that's really route one. Why didn't I think of that? Damn.
How do you not come up with that first? It's the first thing that came in my head. I was like, oh, Ace, he just becomes the jet. And then hopefully he'll be a little bit more careful about crashing himself.
Yeah, you can't keep writing off Sky Strikers when you are the Sky Striker, Ace. Yeah, good one. Good one.
Leader 1.
All right. Yes, very Leader 1. Though Leader 1 was an F-15, as I recall.
Yes,
Anyway, pedantics. Well, geez, that's a correlation. So GoBots and Transformers leaned into the F-15 as its like primary jet fighter. They're still gorgeous. My goodness, while I was in Singapore, I saw a formation flight of F-15s, and they're amazing jets.
Oh, they're
Jeepers.
sexy birds. Yeah.
Why was GI Joe never all about that F-15 action? I guess like
Top Gun.
if there was a cool jet of the 90s, it would have been that, but they settled on the Ghost Striker X-16, and that was that, boys. Anywhooch, welcome to the chat, GI Gary. I think it's my turn again, and are we doing Cobras? We have to.
You can do
right?
Cobras, yeah, by all means. Like,
Cobras. Well, of
And
course,
what about-
Serpentor's going to turn into his own air chariot. Like, he's just this like serpentine hovercraft contraption. Yeah, too easy.
I like the idea of like the Cobra, like the Cobra sort of cabal, the highest echelons of Cobra, like Baroness, Cobra Commander, Destro, and let's say Major Blood, and let's say Serpentor are a combiner. I think that would be like super rad. Like,
man,
so they all transform into their things, but then they can transform together to be this giant mess of a killer machine. You
well,
know, that
then
is, like,
cast
super
it,
powerful or
Paul.
something.
I'm going to throw my head into the ring and say Destro should be the armor. He should be the his tank. Baroness should be something light and airy like a fang. What else you got?
Yes.
What's Cobra Commander doing?
Ooh, Cobra Commander. Off the top of my head, Trouble Bubble, Flight Pod.
Oh, he's kind of small then. But I suppose
Yeah,
It's kind of useless.
no,
Very
I'm
appropriate.
seeing him more like an asp simply because of the color scheme. Like
yeah,
just
that could
like
work.
just like your king in chess has limited movement. Like Cobra Commander is an artillery piece. He depends on someone else to set him up. Or he has
That's
to walk
why
there.
he's so quick to retreat as well, because he has to transform back into himself to retreat. Get out
But the
of
fact that an asp is classic Cobra and it's set in Cobra Blue, or kind of a darker shade of Cobra Blue, but still blue, that tips me that would be Cobra Commander. Sorry, I'm just overruling you left, right, and center. Rob, finish off this combiner. Who does that leave? We've got Destro, Baroness, Cobra Commander. We need 5. So let's do a Zartan. What does Zartan turn into?
Ooh, oh, Zartan's tough. But I kind of want him to transform into the Mamba because it's kind of like
Ooh.
a weird, strange vehicle with double rotors. And yeah, I
That's
can imagine
cool.
it kind of being stealthy. Either that, or no, he could be the what's it called? The Sky Raven.
Oh yeah, the Night Raven.
Night
The Night
Raven. There we
Raven.
go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Because
Very
he's good at
interesting.
stealth. You know, he's very fast. You don't see him coming. And also that gives him the ability to kind of like sneak into areas that he wouldn't be able to otherwise. And just gets
Paul,
himself wherever he needs to go.
Tell us what Storm Shadow transforms into. Come on. You've got it on the tip of your
Ooh.
tongue, right?
He does.
A claw.
A claw. Beautiful. And that's the
Yeah.
kind of the backpack of the Gestalt mode. But Troy Smith asks a very important question in the chats. Would the Cobra High Command be able to work together as one robot?
Well,
Interesting.
Well, this is what makes it Saturday morning cartoon, you know.
Absolutely. They
yeah.
would eventually have differing opinions, and that would tear the robot apart and ultimately allow G.I. Joe to win the day. Because, yes,
that's
I
why
would
G.I. Joe also
imagine...
wins all the time. Because Cobra cannot work together well. If they could, they would always win. It's the same like with most bad guys. They're so powerful, but it's their character flaws that make them weak and allow them to be beaten by the bad guys. The good
Except
guys.
in this case, the enemy hierarchy is
Literally.
literally tearing itself apart. Awesome. Gaz has a great suggestion. I assume for the swamp for Zartan, and that would be the Swamp Fire. You know, any dreadnought
That makes
vehicle, I
perfect
suppose, would
sense, of
be
course.
quite unconventional, and that's Zartan's thing. But no one has said the Chameleon Swamp Skier. Interesting.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
That
We've all
box a
forgotten about
chunk.
it.
And I'm
Well,
just
you
trying
can
to think
transport
like
other people.
because in GoBots, there's a character. I think it's called Black Lamborghini. Is the name of that character.
That's
The
a very
female.
original name.
The female, yeah. And
Basher.
that's always
Crasher?
like, for me. That's
Crasher or
always been
Basher?
Baroness.
Smasher?
Yeah. Like
Nasher?
I'm sure
yes,
Morgan
'cause she
Lofting
had
does
this-
the voice for that character as well.
I would
I mean,
not
I
be
say this without
surprised.
having any facts to hand, but just other than my memory as a child
Pulling it
hearing.
out of your thumb.
But we must stop the GoBots. You know.
The GoBots.
So
Destro, we must
that's
stop
like
the GoBots.
so like if the word this toy line and for some crazy 1980s black magic toy design, you got a GI Joe that was or a transforming army man at 3 3 3/4 scale. Like
Oh.
that would be like a crazy toy line, or they would be kind of like the Micromen then, and then you would get these parts and you'd almost have to parts form them into a vehicle or something like that. Like that I'm sorry, I'm just like shooting forward to what the toys could be like. You know, would they be like normal Transformers? Let's just pretend that the whole history of how GI Joe and Transformers existed in our upbringing didn't exist this way. We're kind of rewriting it. So you know, now that
Well,
we've
then
Well,
you
I've been
would lose out. It's
suitably
the same, like-
distracted, but please continue, Rob.
it's the same like with Transformers themselves. Like they would have to somehow be in scale to each other, but because they're in scale to each other, they lose correct scaling in one form or the other. So either they all the dudes are to scale to with each other, or all the vehicles are to scale with each other. Which is difficult to kind of get right, I think.
yeah.
It's the eternal
the
problem
big
that
problem
plagues
I can see.
Transformers from the early days.
Like the jets really
second
aren't
they got
to
past,
scale. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the Takara Autobot cars are delightfully scaled, but as soon as they start, doing their own designs and sorry, not Takara, they were Diathlon, because they all had little occupants, but then they started pulling in stuff from Microman and started pulling in stuff from, God knows, what was
Koroku.
it? Robotech, Macross. Yeah, of course.
Macross, yeah.
Macross.
I just
that's
wanted
also-
to mention that, yes, thank you, Gaz, in the chats, correcting us. Crasher was a Porsche, and she was voiced by someone called Marilyn Lightstone.
Wow.
That's a cool
And
name.
I just looked at some other casting choices on GoBots. Turbo was by Arthur Burghardt. So Destro voiced
Huh.
Turbo. And I can hear it now. Like the kind of the hot rod of the GoBots, ironically, was voiced by the guy who voiced Destro.
That's wild.
He's
Interesting.
an actor.
Hmm.
Yeah.
BJ Ward, who I think is Lady J. Is that correct, Paul?
Yes.
Voiced a character called Smallfoot.
Ah,
Presumably like the Guardians, I don't know, female, like token female character.
I
I
like
think she
the
was kind of
suggestion.
medical, if I'm not mistaken, or technical.
Could be
Yeah.
actually. I just want to just
Technically
mention this comment from Troy Smith. Zartan should be anything that is dual purpose, like the sea slug. That is actually quite a cool idea. So he would be like a triple changer. So he'd be like Zartan, sea slug,
that's a cool
the
idea.
jet mode, and the glider mode. That's cool.
Does that mean he's Destro's dominator?
Yeah.
Hey guys,
Yeah.
I've come around a little bit on that toy. It's fragile as hell, but like, what you gonna do? It's a transforming tank. It's weird and unique, and there's fun to be had. Fortunately, my rotor blades spin really well, so if I just keep it in helicopter mode and never transform it, it makes for a interesting bit of like attack aircraft. Anyway, greetings to Bob Squad. He's also
Hell
on the
yeah.
money, predicting that Storm
Bobby.
Shadow could make for an interesting claw.
Hell yeah. There we go.
Hell yeah.
Mhm.
Great minds think
So-
alike.
So the story
And
would
fools
be
never
that-
differ.
No. So the
No.
story would be that an ancient alien species is having a war on their planet, and then they steal this most powerful thing, as in, what's it called? The of power, the
MacGuffin.
matrix of power. The
MacGuffin of
They-
power.
They steal the MacGuffin
Matrix of leadership.
power.
Oh, the Decepticons made a matrix of power, didn't they?
Yes,
To kind
I
of
think they
counter
did.
the matrix of leadership.
Power is
So
better
they
than
so they
leadership.
steal this thing, and then the opposing the fascist totalitarian villain from that thing follows them to Earth. They crash land, but instead of like scanning vehicles and stuff, they end up scanning people, or they're like a disease, and then their disease like infects a whole bunch of people, and those people just happen to be a military force that's doing exercises at the same time. And so they become, it's a techno virus. So that's why our military characters, our GI Joes and our Cobras, then start getting these robotic abilities, like being able to transform into things and whatever. I think it could also be like a great marketing ploy if you could only transform them if you had two of the characters. So like you had to have Baroness and Destro, for example, to combine to make a his tank.
I
you
hate
get, like, the
that.
parts. I also hate it. I'm just saying, like, that's a very capitalist corpo move. I also really hate that shit.
It was probably done by like generic off-brand Transformers-esque toys before they had the. I'm blanking on the name, but Battle Trap is one of them. They are basically two vehicles that have to combine to make one robot. They cannot form robots on their own.
That is crazy.
So, like a helicopter and an SUV have to combine to make the robot. And why am I blanking on the name? Normally, I'm better at this. Like random facts that stick when it comes to like toys that I don't really particularly care for.
Nah,
But yes, I do recall. I can see them.
you're suffering from baby
Duocons.
brain.
Duocons. That's what they were called.
Duocon.
And that's just dumb, man. No, I cannot get
Duocons,
behind that idea ever.
You have to buy them both.
Well, as long as they get sold together. But I mean, if they get
Fortunately,
sold
yes, the
separately, then you're screwed.
The Duocons were always sold together, but I can imagine, buying them on the aftermarket that can sometimes be separated, and that must be really lame.
That should be, that would be super, super lame. No, because
Thankfully,
I
this
remember
idea
buying
is
like
not
one
lame.
of those.
It's a really cool
I remember
idea.
buying like an off-brand, like it looked like a cool, like very anime-inspired space jet, very like edgy and wings pointing out of everywhere and multiple like cockpits and stuff.
yeah,
And it just made like a pair of legs. I was so disappointed when I couldn't transform it into a robot. It just made a pair of
Oh
legs.
crap!
That's
Very
like
crap.
getting Marvel Legends when they had the figures, the pieces.
Build-A-Figure.
And you
They
could
still do
only
that,
get a
though.
couple of them. I know they still do it.
Except,
Like that's
except
how
the
I
only
ended
thing
up.
in the package is the Build-A-Figure part.
Yeah.
In this
It is
case,
just
I
nothing
mean, I get
else.
your analogy, Rob.
Yeah.
but like
it's only
this-
the Build-A-Figures pieces.
gross.
Hey,
Nothing else.
now that you mentioned that, a company called Trendmasters, they did this where they actually got like a lot of toys from Japan and sort of repackaged them into into their own brands and things. And they had and it was quite like prevalent in South Africa. I actually found it at Clicks, of all places. But it was a very cool like orange car and a very cool like blue motorbike kind of thing, both very sci-fi.
Paul,
And
we've
they could
spoken about this
transform.
before. Yeah, man. And they
I
could
love that line.
transform to like lame robots on their own, and then like one sort of okay
Properly.
combined robot.
Yeah.
robots in their
But I really love that orange car. I still dig that thing. I'm really sad that I can't find any trace
I
of
like
it
the
in my
blue
toy collection.
bike. I gave it
Lucky you guys
to
like
my
different ones.
parents' domestic.
Oh.
Anyways,
Oh.
guys, should we talk a little bit about a toy that is currently available? A toy that I wish I had to hand, but unfortunately do
Don't
not.
yet.
A lot of people do have the Bumble Striker with Stalker.
The
He looks good,
Bumble
eh?
Striker.
Yeah, that's what I call him as
fantastic.
Bumblebee
well,
or
Bumble
Striker.
Who's a Bumble
Yeah.
Striker? He bumbles being a striker.
Otherwise, it's the Orbi.
I like how his
Gross.
feet look like
Thank you.
mouths.
His feet are the car seats, and I have watched a review of this in quite
No, are they
quite
actually?
depth.
Because that's like so
Yes.
bad. Like, what if like the seats are like leather and now like he's just smashing his feet into the ground, and when you have to sit on those seats, they're going to be so uncomfortable because they're completely
Full of
ruined.
broken glass.
Well,
Yeah,
then you're
broken
lucky it helps him
glass.
sneak around a bit, having padded feet.
It helps him, but it doesn't help the people sitting inside him. It
Helps
does look
his
really
soft
cool.
shoe dancing. Yeah, man, and makes quite a convincing ore striker. I've looked at the transformation. It's intuitive and not overly complex. And what the Bumble Striker does better than the old Mega Hiss is that it kind of cleans up its back kibble without this enormous protrusion. I mean, the roll bars of the ore striker will always kind of hang off the back. You can remove them mercifully, but they are still present. And I suppose if you're a Transformers fan, first and foremost, that's subpar. You'd want them to fold away more neatly. But I think GI Joe fans are going to give this a lot of leniency because we gave well, a lot of us gave the His Tank a big pass, and I think, I mean,
Well, the
by all
Baroness didn't help
accounts,
it. Yeah.
no, she did not. But this Stalker looks great, and I mean, Stalkers are becoming particularly brittle, so it gives you a nice carefree Stalker to play with. But yeah, almost unanimously, people are happy with this toy. So if you can find it, particularly if you can find it at a good deal, get it. I was disgusted
Don't
to
sleep
see
on
what the recommended retail price in the UK was. Gross. I can't believe
Aren't
you
these
guys
like
are paying that
$60?
much. Yes, but they're close to £100.
Oh my
At least
god,
they
that
were.
is disgusting.
That's horrifying. Or was it £50? Anyways, basically, it felt like I got a really sweet deal with the Mega Hiss when I was listening to this guy's review. His name's Prime versus Prime. Wonderful, very young British reviewer. Gets this stuff in super early, very consistent reviews, beautiful lighting, but laughable how little he knows about our era of GI Joe. Like, he didn't know that action figures had rubber bands in them. He was that kind of naive to the fact. And also he was like, it's a pity about the weapon that Bumblebee comes with because it really has a nice big cavity for a spring-loaded missile. Why doesn't it have a missile? I'm like, dude, do not say that to die-hard, old-school G.I. Joe fans. They'd be like, no, don't put a spring-loaded launcher in our beloved
Thank
Ore
goodness
Striker.
there are new people getting into this stuff. I think that's awesome, regardless of his historical knowledge of toys.
Well, G.I. Gary has his Stalker next to him right now, and Bumble Striker. On the topic of the footwear, they're Cybertronian leather, so I guess they aren't gonna get too scuffed up by
They're gonna
being
get
walked
scuffed
on.
up too quick. Okay, I thought it would be something like that, something sci-fi.
Troy's
I'm
got
hoping to-
his, and
Yeah,
Bob Squad is a
everyone's
fan of
getting
Prime
this.
versus Prime.
There we
Nice.
go.
And I know that, like I've said in the past, that like Stalker is one of the biggest draw cards for me with this release, and I know that that's kind of the where every GI Joe fan is like, yeah, I'm gonna get that because I'm gonna get a cool Stalker and stuff. But yeah, the Awe
I'm just
Striker,
spending £100 so I can get Stalker.
you can get a better Stalker, which
Look,
let's not mess around.
Paul,
It's
this is an
probably cheaper
absolute
than buying a
no-brainer
vintage
for
one.
you, bro, because
Yeah.
you don't have a classic Stalker and you don't have a
Pardon me.
classic Awe Striker either.
I don't.
And this
and
fits the
and I
silhouette
like the
of a
toy.
Stalker. Yeah.
I like it.
And he
like,
even
I
likes
really
the
like
charm.
it. With the Mega Hiss, I was like, I like it, but I don't love it. With the Bumble Striker, I actually love it. And
Vintage Awe Strikers have some issues that can deter you from enjoying them properly. The turning front forks is one that is kind of fiddly because they kind of lock in one direction, then you're kind of effectively dragging them if you're pushing them along your desk, or you're always doing a left or a right turn, hard turn. The aerials are always stressed if they're not broken or missing. The attachment points for the black cabling, particularly on the roll bar, that could easily snap. What else? The suspension, the rear suspension, can be shot on a lot of them. In fact, I reinforced mine with 2 paper clips because my wheels were just dragging on the inside of the wheel arches. So vintage Awe Strikers are delightful and also a pain in the butt. This looks like a very, very solid reproduction of one that won't give you those kind of irks. So even if you were a hardcore GI Joe fan, just using this as an Awe Striker with the Transformers logo on the back, it's fine. It's cool. It's perfectly serviceable. It's a fun, buggy toy to load up with Joes and off you go. I do, however, imagine it's got the same foot peg issues as the Mega Hiss, in that it only will accommodate new reproduction O-ring figures and not
retro figures.
classics, which sucks because both the Awe Striker and the Hiss Tank, I've said this before, the foot peg boards are quite a prominent feature of both these vehicles.
Yeah,
It's not
and
like a
appropriate.
vehicle that just has extraneous foot peg points just dotted around its surface. That, like, what are the guys doing? Like, just sort of surfing on the hood of this vehicle? Like, they got nothing to hold on to. Whereas with the Awe Striker, those foot peg boards are like sunken, like mesh grates.
Yeah,
The guys
makes
actually
perfect
can.
sense.
You can kneel them in those pontoons, whatever you want to call them, gunwales or runners. And the same thing with the back sill of the Hiss. It's so deliberately a additional troop ride-on capacity. So for that not to mesh well with vintage O-ring figures really sucks for me. But hey, Hasbro's smart in kind of insulating this new O-ring line, which prompts me to talk a little bit about the fact that it seems dead on arrival, at least at this point. There's no
new retro line?
announcement. The new
Do you
O-ring
mean-
retro releases, like beyond the 3 2-packs, the Stinger, and the 2 crossover vehicles, like no new announcements, and that's a gaping hole. Gentlemen, discuss.
I feel like they have another month to go before the end of the 40th anniversary. So I believe Hasbro can pull this back. They can get.
Oh,
back
and the
to it.
Sky Striker, of course.
Oh, and of course the Sky Striker, but like that's a Pulse exclusive. So
Rob, you're believing that like they're not abandoning the O-ring.
One
very
more month to
quietly.
go. They can do it.
Okay.
I think they're probably moving forward. I mean, I think they know their focus. Well, they feel their focus has to be the classified line, and I think that's good because I mean that's where they're making their money. That's where they're innovating a lot with design and updating things. So I can see kind of where the retro line is not really their focus, but I think as these really cool crossover vehicles sell more, I think they will. They should continue doing the line. We should get more like cool classic characters updated. It's silly to just have maybe 6 or 7 figures that you can have interact with these really cool new vehicles.
I agree
Paul,
with
what
you
say
there,
you,
Rob.
Must
man?
be more. He
I
agrees with
think
me.
I think Hasbro's trying a lot of things at the moment. I think okay, let's just consider one thing. They made their most money, I think, last year and this year off Magic the Gathering. So I kind of feel like, if anything, we're most likely going to see GI Joe
Ooh.
characters on Magic cards
Interesting.
anytime soon now. I wouldn't be
Magic the
surprised.
Gathering
But
characters is GI Joe's classified figures.
ooh. But I think like looking at how they've been like pumping out the classified stuff, and yeah, as Steve said, we haven't had any like real news about the retro things. Yeah, I think it's kind of safe to say that if it's and this is uncharacteristic for Hasbro, if we haven't seen anything by now, if you haven't seen any rumors or anything about this, that, and whatever figure coming out, I've got a strong feeling that it might be dead. But then again, let's give it until the end of the financial year and see how the Bumble Striker does, and maybe they'll go, oh wait, there's potential with the Bumble Striker, and sell a whole bunch. But yeah, I also kind of feel like it's kind of dying, which is kind of sad because I think it's a great concept that they had there, and I think it did a lot for the vintage GI Joe fans, and I think it does a lot. I think it was like Hasbro moving in the direction of He-Man or Moto Origins, and I think that would have been so good for them had they kept pushing that forward. But yeah, they're ultimately not going to because it's Hasbro, sadly.
I'm going to take a hard line and say the O-ring is going to quietly disappear, just like the modern construction disappeared.
No. And how is Prime
no,
versus Prime ever going to learn how cool O-ring figures are?
it's a shame because they just did these two, and it's kind of fulfilled a need that we've always had as GI Joe fans who also dabble in Transformers. And we've always asked the question, like, why haven't we had in-scale transforming GI Joe vehicles? So to just stop here is a shame. But let's also not lose sight of the fact that, like, the modern retro figures had two vehicles, and that was the Ore Striker and the Hiss. And then they did the Hiss 3, it was basically the same mold, but like that's where it ended. So it seems like, they pushed these two designs out and then, dust their hands off and move back into full-time classified. It's like
See you at the 50th.
we gave you that taste that you've been craving. Let's get back to the main event.
Yeah.
And also, there's something that I recall Emily saying in one of her.
I hate how cynical it is, but yeah.
Well, I'm Cynical Steve. Welcome to my show. But she said that the design team were kind of caught with their pants down by Hasbro's ruling middle of this year that the plastic-free packaging excludes that their decision to take away the plastic does not apply to collector lines. So main lines, like classified, will fully adopt the plastic-free packaging moving forward. But collector lines that rely on the window card, or the window boxes or carded bubble blister packs, they would still be allowed to operate as per usual. And that ruling came out too late for them to have any product ready for the end of 2022. They kind of decided,
so they probably already shelved. Let's get rid of that.
Yeah, the carded retro classified stuff had nothing else in the pipeline beyond the initial ones that are already available. And the O-ring stuff also kind of had petered out because of this decision. So had they known that the decision would be overturned and that these lines would be exempt from the plastic-free packaging rule, they would have cracked on and kept designing. But I think maybe that's a little bit of corporate doublespeak. Maybe that's just their way of saying, like, kind of, oh, we would have loved to give you guys far more O-ring figures, but the plastic-free packaging got in the way.
Guys.
And now they're it's just excommunicado. Like they're not saying anything anymore, so it'll kind of quietly fade into the background.
Yeah, I also feel like it's them kind of going, yeah, okay, we gave you what you wanted. Surprise, it didn't work. Now let us carry on doing what we want to do, which is GI Joes and Magic cards, which I really think is going to happen.
Oh, for sure.
Like really,
It's
really.
gonna
I know
happen
it's gonna happen
really
because
soon.
what is that? There's a property now that's coming. There's a magic card line that's coming out, and it's got another Hasbro property as the cards on as the characters. It's a whole thing.
My Little Pony.
No, it's not My Little Pony. But I saw some samples the other day. I wonder if I'm even allowed to speak about it. Anyway,
I don't think you are. I
but
think you're,
there
you're
is
talking out of your ass
no. There's
beyond
a
your
big thing.
NDA.
There's a yeah. I might be speaking beyond NDA, but yeah,
There
there's
you
something
go.
I saw the other day, and I was like, wow, they're doing magic cards of that. That's insane. Like I've never seen that ever happen with magic cards before. So let's see.
Do you know what's not cynical? Crossovers. More crossovers.
More crossovers?
What else could we possibly cross GI Joe over with? I think
Oh my goodness.
there is tons of things that they could cross over with. I'm hoping you guys have some ideas of things that they could cross over with, but I'm going to present two that I think would be a lot of fun. And two, yeah, two, because I was like, damn, I got good ideas.
Is it any of the stuff that they've already crossed GI Joe with, or is this
As
something
far as I
fresh?
know, I feel like the ideas that I've come up with, the ones that they have not done yet, you will need to correct me if I'm wrong, because my knowledge of GI Joe is not absolute like Stevens is, and Paul's to a degree.
Absolute GI Joe knowledge.
I know everything. BJ Summers is the voice of Baroness.
Isn't BJ Summers from that show with Notch Johnson or something?
Don Johnson.
No, Notch Johnson.
Oh,
Who
Notch
was like,
Johnson.
It was like
Who
a
was Notch
ripoff of
Johnson?
Baywatch. It was really, really good.
Okay.
It was really
BJ.
great. And
Oh
I'm sure
yeah,
there's a
she was
character
Pamela
called
Anderson.
BJ
Yes,
Summers.
was a character called BJ. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But
Anyway.
so these are two that I think would be very interesting, and also they fit thematically with GI Joe, I believe. So the first one is actually Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm just going to get ahead of Paul in case he was going to say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I feel like it's such an easy one. Like, how has it not actually happened already? It hasn't, has it? It hasn't.
No, it hasn't.
I don't think it has. Absolutely not. Because it's once again, it lines up. I mean, I think more cartoon wise than comic book wise. It's about ninjas, it's about gadgets, it's good versus evil, and grand diabolical schemes, especially when Krang enters the picture with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
And there's a ninja clan.
And there's a ninja clan there as well. So I mean, you have the foot in here, and then you have the red ninjas and the Oshikage. And I think you can have really cool like interactions between the different characters on the good side and the bad side. Like Leo being the leader would be very interesting to see him interacting, say, with Duke or Flint. Donnie would be a great to see him interacting with the more technically minded GI Joes, maybe sci-fi.
Mainframe, yeah.
Mainframe. Raphael would make a really cool. I think he would link up really well with someone like Jinx, who's more, I think, grounded than he is in general. And it kind of like helps him to kind of like learn to be maybe more grounded than he is, because he's usually the brashest of them. And I think Mikey would do well to like link up with some sort of pranksters on the GI Joe team, or someone who really enjoys eating pizza. Yeah, there you go.
I kind of think Raphael and Snake Eyes working together is kind of a dream team thing.
I think that'd be awesome too. I definitely thought it would be a cool idea to think about that. And also, like as I was saying, themes wise, I think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles always brings forward, especially in the cartoons, the idea, the core principles of brotherhood and teamwork. And I feel like teamwork obviously has always been like a big thing with GI Joe. Like we are better together, we work well as a team to beat our enemies, and that's always been a very, very big thing with the Turtles. Where it's always about teamwork. You know, Raphael always wants to go off on his own and do stuff, but he always in the end realizes it's better to do stuff together with my brothers.
Yeah, because they usually have to rescue him. Yeah,
exactly. They always got to go and rescue him. He's one of the cooler ones, but he always needs to be rescued. And I think it'll be such a fun like crossover. You know, Cobra kind of like teaming up with Krang to kind of like take over the world in some way. Bigger on Tonrat. That's actually an awesome idea.
There's a cool team up for you.
Hell yeah.
April O'Neil and Scoop.
Hell yeah.
That could be pretty cool.
I completely glossed over that in my mind.
Yeah,
But
because
I think
you're not thinking of mutants. But April is like kind of
yeah,
integral
she
to the
is
whole
definitely
turtle
part of the
experience.
team. That would
Yeah.
actually be that's actually a good one.
And they both wear yellow, boys. Come on.
Yes.
Oh,
And they both come with a handgun and a camera.
well spotted, exactly. So I think it's a really cool crossover because also TMNT has been crossing over with a lot of other properties in the last couple of years.
Ghostbusters for one.
Ghostbusters, they crossed over with them. They crossed over with Batman. Now currently they're crossing over with the Power Rangers as well.
Yeah, which is
So
actually kind of cool. Yeah.
That does sound really cool. It sounds very fitting.
I think the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles might be the biggest crossover sluts of them all. They just have no standards. They will cross over with anyone.
Anybody.
Of a similar status.
Yeah.
And I think it works because I mean, like TMNT, yes, they are ninjas and they're mutants, but they're not over the top, superheroics. It's not like where the power levels are so skewed where it will be definitely the one team will always beat up the other team or at least be saving the other team. I think that they definitely would work better together than say superheroes would with the GI Joes.
Yeah.
Look, I like the fact that the TNMT guys are essentially street level.
Yeah.
They might be mutants, but there is some smattering of mutancy in GI Joe. Zartan is a perfect example, but also like if you think of Venomous Maximus in the Valor versus Venom era, like there are and experimentations with reptilian DNA happens plenty.
Yeah,
so
and it fits in with they fit together so well, I think.
Yeah, and of course ninjas. I mean,
ninjas.
50% of all GI Joe adventures these days are ninja centric. Now, guys, I'm gonna hit pause quickly and just add another dose of cynicism. This time, not prompted by me, but by Zantara, who asks or says, "I rarely am a fan of crossovers / shared universes. When there is a plot to destroy the world that one hero group is addressing, I always ask myself where the other one is at. It is distracting." And I wanted to ask this of you, Paul, when we were talking about Transformers, that the Decepticons' modus operandi, or their primary goal, is always let's farm this world for Energon. They're after Energon. They don't care about the Earth. They want to leave it a burnt out husk. They care about Cybertron. They want to harvest our energy. Where does that leave Cobra Command? Like, they want to rule the world. They don't want to rule a burnt out cinder. So like the goals will seldom align neatly. And I mean, that feeds into what Zantara is saying. Like, if one group is trying to achieve something and you've got this other group that are kind of very, very round hole, square peg trying to fit in with that goal, like they're going to be pulling apart. Like you can't service both groups' individual goals, at least not properly.
Yeah.
Anyway, just something to bear in mind with crossovers. And I too, like, I'm also going to be in that camp of like, it's fun for the flash factor, but very rarely do you feel a crossover working, like down to the brass tacks, because these two worlds
for sure,
are separate and distinct.
It's so different. But I think, that is true. There are very few crossovers that it's like, why do these guys have to work together? Often, yes, it's a gimmick, like, I mean, even some of the cooler like comic book ones, I think like Superman and Spider-Man, I thought that was quite cool. It's like, how do they really like interact with the opposite opposing bad guys? It's like, what are they bringing to the table that you cannot normally defeat? That you need to have some sort of otherworldly interaction.
Well,
and I mean,
cool thing, yeah,
but within worlds themselves, there can be contradictions, and over time, I think, for example, like the MCU, it's getting so big now that it's very difficult to keep track of every single thing that's been established and make every new story actually interlock and fit well with what has happened before, as well as they could do in, say, previous phases. So even within franchises themselves, there are difficulties. But I think it's more glaringly obvious when there are crossovers that, like parts of this world do not fit together well at all.
I'm going to keep coming back to my favorite example of a crossover, a successful G.I. Joe Transformers crossover, and that being Tom Shirley.
Comes early.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Always and forever. That guy, because he just threw it all at the wall, man. Like I think he kept everyone's motivations true because they're all so convoluted and twisting. And I mean, Dr. Venom has this crazy, like, I am a good guy. He needs to prove himself. General Flag wants to nuke everybody. Like, just he's absolutely gung ho madman. Hawk wants to honor his family legacy, and he knows that he's the only one who can defeat the Decepticons. Megatron's trying to hold his whole world together. Like, everyone is still staying true to their own goals. So that is a shining example of how to do it right.
Yeah.
Agreed,
But I
yeah.
know
It's
that's not
rare,
everyone's cup
but
of
it
tea.
does work out.
Some people can't stomach the art, so that's as far as they get. So they check out. Guys,
Can't get
I have a
much further.
master list on the GI Joe wiki page of all the
Insane.
crossovers. Now, this
Wild.
isn't just, well, they've got crossovers and also mentions, and the mentions list is long because GI Joe obviously is a kind of a cultural touchstone. It's going to be mentioned in everything from
Yeah.
the Goldbergs to Ready Player One. But as far as actual, crossover medium is concerned, we have Action Man, we have Transformers, we have Street Fighter, we have Infestation, Unit E, Monopoly, Danger Girl, Toy Soldiers, ROM, The $6 Million Man, Fortnite, World of Tanks, and most recently, as of February 23rd, 2022, something called Brawlhalla.
Oh yeah.
I'm guessing that's a
It's a
video
game. Yeah, the Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow are skins. So in anything from a skin to actual like written content, that's kind of the closed list for now.
I'm still
Wild.
like my mind is still on that on what Zantara brought up, because for me, like, what had happened there, sorry, just because I was trying to get out of my system, but yeah, so Decepticons are basically bleeding Earth of its energon, and then Cobra is not necessarily going to help the Decepticons, like, so he'll also Cobra will also oppose them, but for different reasons to why the Joes would oppose them. Like, Cobra might see them as a threat and want to take them off the chessboard. They could also, you could swing it around, like Megatron promises them their own planet or whatever the hell else, whatever's, but should just be hokey. And then typical Cobra, they'll try to double cross Megatron to turn them all into, like, his tanks or something. But GI Joe has it does feel like GI Joe is one of those properties where you could find a lot of ways to make that work, whereas, and the Ninja Turtles as well, as you guys actually mentioned, as Rob, as you brought up earlier, that also actually really works with a lot of things. I mean, they even crossed over with themselves, with their original selves. Well, not original selves, but with their original animated selves. So that's so that is a thing. But yeah, I know what you guys are talking about, because I personally hate it, even in like just Marvel and DC, when you've got like a big bad villain attacking, and then you've got like Spider-Man or pardon me, Marvel Girl or whatever that's dealing with this villain, and you're sitting there the whole time going, so where's the Fantastic Four? Where are the Avengers? Where are the X-Men? Where are the Ultimates? Where are like that
True.
always bugs me. Yeah.
I always catch myself asking those questions, but you can't adequately address these worlds, like, at least not cinematically. Like, it's still got to have limitations, because casting calls can only be so big. I mean, wasn't that shot of the end of Endgame, the funeral? I'm not going to say whose funeral, because spoilers, but wasn't that the most complex scheduling ever produced? Like, to get everyone on set for that day and not comp anyone in digitally. Like, they actually had everyone present. I mean, the stars were in alignment that day to have all the heavy hitters. Anywho, Rob sends his apologies, but he didn't realize his power was about to be cut.
Oh, shame, man. Yeah, but load shedding has been like surprising us quite a bit. Like it surprised us yesterday. We weren't supposed to have, and then somewhere there was a notification that we were going to get, but you don't notice it because you get told, oh, there's not going to be any this weekend or something. So yeah.
Delightful. Well, we crack on, Paul and I. Look, dude, do you have a crossover idea that you're dying to explore? Please don't say Ghostbusters or Gundam.
No. I wouldn't bring those into the world.
I'm kidding. I'm sure there would be fantastic crossovers. Like, there is scope for the supernatural in GI Joe. Give all the freaks a chance to play, and
Totally.
the Ghostbusters need to come in and clean out the crap that they unleash on the world.
Yeah, totally.
Too easy. Writes itself.
Yeah, it does. And also, like, I don't think it should be like a headlining event. I think it'd be cool if the Joes just run into Ghostbusters on a mission. Like they're kind of going to explore some kind of weird
Just a
heebie-jeebie-
cameo?
Yeah,
Come
like
on,
just
man.
having them as a cameo and then maybe being there for the rest of the
Ah.
episode or something. That could be fun. Like, I don't want it. I hate it when like crossovers are these big headline events. I like it when they're like kind of subtle and they kind of sneakishly introduced into things. A show that I recently watched
No,
that
if you
does that quite
use
well
the
is
Ghostbusters. You got to use the Ghostbusters. Like, you can't just have them. Oh, you guys are here too. Just I don't know, just doing your business.
But that's the thing. The Ghostbusters very much are that. I mean, they ghost janitors basically. So like,
Yeah,
don't
which
know,
makes their role a little bit menial when you're contrasting them with a bunch of like highly trained crack commandos, like
exactly
flying
right.
around the world defeating terrorists. I mean,
And then you got Peter
I don't know.
Venkman like ribbing them all the time as well. So
Maybe that's what GI Joe needs, like more ribbing, like someone to just poke at the plot holes and just basically be a smart ass. Hey, yeah, there's scope,
I think so.
I guess,
I think there's totally scope for that kind of thing.
just to have these
think-
bumbling everymen coming along with them.
Also, like I know everybody's expecting this, but I have explored this in my head. Like, how would He-Man work with GI Joe, for example? How would Motu work? But how would it?
How did I not see this coming? How?
Right?
How did I not see this coming?
Yeah, but like
Jeepers. It is
you would
in
have
the
to play it
title
in
of Heberg.
But like, how would you make that work? Like, how would they actually cross over? Because they are so, in a lot of ways, diametrically opposed thematically. Like the one is hectic swords and sorcery and magic with technology, and the other one is guns and bravado and shooty and ninja.
He-Man
And-
plays out in a distant galaxy, and GI Joe plays out very much in this one, and so perhaps.
But
there
He-Man's
needs to be
mother
some
is
kind
human,
of
hey?
portal. Well, yes. Where is Earth in relation to Eternia? How, like in the
Well-
movie, how did they bridge the gap between Earth and Eternia?
A portal. It's a portal
There you
that
go.
was a cosmic key, and also He-Man's mother. She also got sucked into like some kind of like astronomical event, which sucked her into Eternia, and then bang, she's She-Ra and He-Man's mom because apparently she likes Space Kings. So, like, but like
Bob doesn't. Bob can see that He-Man getting pretty preachy with the Joes, and the Joes getting frustrated. Yeah, totally. Man.
Yeah, I can-
You're not the
I can
boss of
see a
me,
lot of-
muscle guy.
I can see a lot of like Eternians getting shot.
And Tim Wilde has a great example of like blue collar guys mixed with like best of the best of the best. So the movie Armageddon is a good example of a crossover with everyday blue collar guys that are colorful and fun, mixed with these NASA experts, and the dynamics worked in a fun and still serious way. Yeah, man, I should probably watch that again. Michael Bay's finest hour, that and The Rock.
I thought I really liked Bad Boys, but anyway,
Oh,
yeah,
it's
I
alright.
like Bad Boys. And
It's either your
didn't
thing
Michael
or it
Bay
ain't.
also do Black Hawk Down?
Nah. If he did that, nah. That look,
No.
Michael Bay. I think the United States Army absolutely adore him because he shows their equipment in such a glorious light. Like he knows how to shoot machines at sunset. Golden hour, amazing. Like stuff looking badass.
Osprey's actually
But
staying in the air, that kind of thing.
I think Black Hawk Down had a far grittier approach. I don't know. It was. I'll look it up.
Black Hawk
You
Down
can
would go
continue.
on to define every Call of Duty game since
Hmm.
that film came out, because every Call of Duty game has essentially been like, yeah, you know that whole Black Hawk Down movie? Yeah, we want a Call of Duty game to feel like that, like every single time. So,
Yep.
which they kind of get, right? So, yeah. So,
Oh,
and
dude,
I mean,
Ridley Scott, of
Oh,
course.
is Ridley Scott who did Black Hawk Down?
Yeah.
I'm actually ashamed that I didn't know that.
No, don't be ashamed. It's a subtle Ridley Scott because it's not very. What is it? It's not plot driven. It's historical, and it's almost like the director takes a back seat to just the story that's being told, right?
Hello.
Hello.
Hey,
Rob's joined
okay,
us
so
again. He's on his
I
mobile.
completely forgot to check load shedding for this evening. Yes, I am standing at my window where the reception is the best. Hopefully I don't sound too shitty.
Amazing. No, you sound perfectly fine as far as I'm concerned.
Nice one.
I mean,
Rob.
Oh
we're
yeah.
gonna miss your sexy professional mic, but we're just happy to have you, Rob. You had another
yeah.
crossover in mind, didn't you?
Yes, I did. This one
Let's
was
have
a
it, man.
lot wilder, I think, my idea, but I think it works because, especially because it's a realm that has more rules than say superheroics does, and that is magic. Especially if you cross over with say DC or Marvel magic users. I think more so DC, because DC often has more established rules about how magic works. And why I think it's important that magic has rules is that it means that GI Joe can apply what they know about tactics and whatever else. They can apply that to the magical world because there are rules that they can follow and learn and use. And the cool thing is that magic users can then apply stuff that they have to the vehicles and to the weapons of the GI Joes that would help them in defeating whatever enemies that they might have. I mean, it's probably a very far out idea, compared to like TMNT, where it's very base and street level with the kind of threats that they would be facing. But I think it would be a very interesting idea to see like GI Joe going up against, I don't know, Dormammu or Nightmare, or any of the like crazy wild magic things that you can find in DC. And I just thought that was very interesting to kind of like put them against something that is completely out of their wheelhouse, but something that has rules, as opposed to superheroes where superheroes can literally do anything, and there is almost nothing that a man with a gun can really counter on their own. So I thought that was probably a really cool idea to kind of like get them fighting like magic stuff. Hopefully that was worth me coming back for.
It is totally worth you coming back.
Always, Robbie. Always, buddy. No, I would contrast and say, like, actually, magic is the one thing that the rules are always being rewritten on. Like,
oh yeah, no, for
superheroes,
sure.
some of them, their power is just so awesome that you never have a quantifiable baseline. But like, some superheroes are a super soldier serum or a suit of armor, things like that, which do feel more realistic and more kind of couched in reality than like, don't know what Doctor Strange can do. Can he resurrect the dead? Yeah, I guess. Can he move time backwards? Yeah, sure, he can do that. He can open a portal to another world, make you breathe in space. Fine. What is the ceiling? What is the basement of his power? Who knows?
Well, then I
Whatever
suppose
fits the plot, basically.
Yeah, no, for sure. But if you can bring it more down to street level, I mean, I think there are examples of magic users like Constantine, who does deal more with rules, where he's fighting demons that have, rules. Like if you find the name of the demon, you can defeat them, or if you use certain tools, like the magic enemies have weaknesses that you can exploit, and that's something that almost anyone can, as long as they have the knowledge. I think often, especially with really good street level magic stories, knowing really is half the battle. If you know your enemy, you can defeat them, and that's always been obviously a huge thing with GI Joe is the knowledge you have wins the battle a lot of the time. And I think that can definitely be applied once again in the arena of magic, or at least more of like a ground level understanding of magic, and where the rules are more concrete. Because I think some of the best magic systems, especially in fantasy and broader fantasy, are ones that have rules that the novelists, that the authors follow, and it makes the world more interesting because you can kind of grasp like what the limits are to the characters' abilities and what they can and can't do. Where yes, Doctor Strange feels like he can literally do anything he wants to, but there are magic systems that do have limits as to how they can be deployed. So I thought that was a very like far out idea, but one that I thought could work if you kind of write it smartly. And I think that's what a good crossover is. It is well written and smart, and hopefully not too gimmicky.
Well, the rules thing is important because if you're going to cross over,
Do you
whatever's
envision
crossing
like the
over,
top tier characters interacting?
I would imagine so. I mean, also, I'd actually probably grounded more in say DC, because I know at least with DC, I know that there are a lot of rules that they do follow. Like there is costs to the magic that they use, and especially if you make it more ground level, you can have them interact with more grounded versions of those characters. Constantine is one. There's another one I think called Doctor Occult. And even if you do get to the more high level characters, they can interact with them and have them work within the world, because even though they are more powerful, they do work to a certain set of rules that they have to follow to be able to use their magic. So you could have them, like teaming up with Dr. Fate. But I think it would be really interesting. It would be really different. But I do favor my TMNT idea over my magic idea. I'm being honest.
The magic idea, what I like about that is that you could take a character like Crystal Ball and give him a lot more relevance.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see, like that kind of thing is cool. And like I enjoyed that. That's where that crossover comes in. And as I was saying earlier, like you need those rules. You need them to be hard and fast, because whoever's crossing over into the other property, their presence is only interesting because they now have to follow the rules of the property, or of Grandma's house, for example. The property
that makes sense.
So I like that quite a lot as well. With TMNT, like I love the TMNT thing as well, because like maybe if you brought GI Joes into like TMT, the world of TMNT, then you're dealing with things like dimensional portals, which GI Joe's never really dealt with, quote unquote. Really,
except one episode or one 2-parter.
End. Yeah, but yeah, that could be very interesting. And how I wonder how GI Joe weapons would fare against stuff in there, because everything in Turtles is like lasers. I mean, if you take just the cartoon, actually even in the comic book, there's a lot of lasers and things because of the meddling of guys from Dimension X. So,
well, and we'll see what Roblox Marduce has to do. If it's going to pierce a rhino, what's his name? Rhino, Rhinoplasty. Is his name Rhino?
Bebop.
You mean Rocksteady? Bebop.
Rhinoplasty. Rocksteady.
Rocksteady. Oh goodness.
Actually, dude, yeah, like I'm just thinking now, like you could have like Roadblock, instead of using Marduce, he's got like some weapon that the Fugitoid makes for him or something.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that's why I think it would work, because they would work together to come up with weapons that would be more effective against the enemies that they are facing. And I think that's where someone like Donatello would shine, is kind of adapting the GI Joe tech to work in the setting that they would be in.
And then obviously have to try and get the Joes home as well. So
yeah,
that would be another thing where it could be like, oh, that could be fun.
I think it would be really cool. Hell yeah.
I also, and maybe this is a small clue for something that's coming in the future, but that may or may not actually happen, but let's see. I also like the idea of things that exist within the realm of, like, let's say GI Joe, for example. So there's the man from Auntie, for example. Like there's that agency in the cartoon, which I think is quite an interesting thing. And then I also like the idea of like there being like TV series,
Spy Who Rooked
cartoons.
Me.
Yes. So I dig stuff like that as well, where you've got a world within a world. You've got the Joes are a fan of something that they watch on TV. And I also like that like sort of meta-ness of that. and Steve, I think,
Yeah, they're
you
watching
said Steve wanted to-
Spider-Man at one point.
Exactly right. Like I kind of like that. I'd like to see what this version of Spider-Man is like in the GI Joe world, because you got characters like Zaymot and Tomax who can literally fall out of windows and then like catch a pole and do flips and land into vehicles, and they're totally fine. So like, how great is Spider-Man to GI Joes really? If their enemies can do things like that, how great is Spider-Man if you know somebody like Snake Eyes or Storm Shadow? What makes Spider-Man so super? The fact that he can shoot webs with the web shooter. It's interesting. Anyway, I basically assaulted Stephen with an idea last night after he suggested a concept, and like my brain's in this meta space now as well of making things within things.
Absolutely crazy. Well, that's what we're trying to do here, crossing over to the other side.
With John Edwards.
Gross. Oh man, that boy had his time in the sun, didn't he? Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
People are gullible, huh?
That's Crystal Ball for me. That's like Crystal Ball before he joined GI Joe.
That's-
Like,
Oh, brilliant.
The
Yeah,
biggest
that's kind
load
of-
of bullshit I've ever seen.
oh, totally. Like, actually, before him is Uri Geller, and Uri Geller was my big inspiration for how Crystal Ball should go, because Uri Geller is also like serious con artist, so-called psychic, so-called telekinesis.
Well, gentlemen, I enjoy your crossover ideas. They have not been exploited yet. So
Nah, we
great.
actually came up with ones that no one thought of.
CNMT.
Oh yeah.
Yep, very good. Very good. My
John Edwards.
crossover concept. I'm going to say it's a concept because it's not crossing over with a specific existing, what would you say?
Property?
IP.
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 But I would just want GI Joe to finally like step into this world of time travel.
Ah.
So this is kind of prompted, I guess, by the Dreamwave comics. I think it was IDW as well. They did a crossover, the Transformers crossover, and GI Joe set in World War II. Right? Paul, you referenced this on the show before.
I love it.
So what if there was some way for Cobra to jump back in time and twist history to favor their ends? Like to tip the world into a downward spiral of warfare that ultimately one dominant world power would emerge from, that dominant world power being Cobra, kind of coming from the ashes. And G.I. Joe having to assemble a counter team, a time squad to go back and rectify all of Cobra's meddling and ultimately like destroy time travel entirely in order to stop this meddling from taking place. So I've always kind of had this on the back burner, and fortunately through the GI Joburg YouTube membership have kind of started exploring some of these concepts, just how I stitch this world together. And it's an interesting little rabbit hole to go down. Every week I kind of expand the plot a little bit, and it's definitely made me think a lot about wedging time travel into G.I. Joe and how it could be made cool and relevant. But since G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, spans 4 decades, and G.I. Joe as a brand spans, cheapers, 6 or 7 decades, we now have this great cross-section of history to play with. Like, we have guys that look absolutely legit in like World War II uniforms through to the 70s, where you had the adventure team, through to the 80s with A-Raw, through to the now. And like, imagine if you almost got this kind of dimensionality of toy history along with your G.I. Joe adventure through time. And it occurred to me that G.I. Joe even has essentially got a time traveler already, if you consider Sergeant Savage. He's a
true.
He's a ranger who goes into the ice Captain America style in the 40s, wakes up in the 90s and joins GI Joe at the behest of Hawk and Lady J. So he's kind of moved forward in time. He'd be like numero uno on the team because of his familiarity with the 1940s and the then now of the 90s. I figured an Outback style bad boy survivalist would be a nice counter to the straight-laced sergeant. And then you'd need your technical character who, I don't know, I also want to kind of pull things interdimensionally almost, like Mayday from Extreme, from that era, pluck her out. And then maybe someone absolutely blisteringly now, like, we need a ninja. Let's use Dawn Moreno, aka Snake Eyes. Yeah.
I'm so glad you didn't say Kamakura. Sorry.
Though apparently
Brand
the
new guy on
figure's
the
not
block.
bad.
The figure's great.
Anyways,
I'm not gonna lie.
so this is my time squad, who have been tasked with, I suppose, doing what Cap did in Endgame and like restore things, stop Cobra from getting this temporal advantage.
Have you ever read?
Have I ever read? I have read from time to time. I prefer
Incredible.
watching YouTube, but every now and then,
Okay, well,
if I must, I read to my son. But yes, to answer your question, Paul, I have read.
Oh,
I've
good.
done the
I'm so
reading.
glad.
Moving on. New shit section, right?
No, well, I was gonna say there's a TV series that I'd like you to check out. Cheeky shit. There's a TV series which is based on Philip K. Dick's book of The Man in the High Castle, which is very much to do with a lot of that.
Sounds like a Snoop Dogg album title.
No, like if you
Getting high in the sky.
I'm glad
My
that
castle
I
in the
didn't
sky.
spoil it for you.
High castle.
But check it out, because I love like what you're saying. What also makes sense to me that I kind of dig in that world is that Cobra has actually been successful, and so the time traveling that's happening is very, very important. It's kind of last ditch, secret, covert. Humanity's last stand against Cobra, basically, or GI Joe's last stand against Cobra. And it could be played over and over and over again. And there's proof that Cobra has actually meddled with the space-time continuum. And yeah, I think there's a lot of.
I think it's a really good idea. I mean, it also kind of, well, not similar to, but with magic, as long as you have rules that you can follow and people can grasp, it makes it a lot easier to kind of go through with a story like that. And I think if time travel has, like rules that make sense, it would be a lot easier for people to kind of like follow along with this fantastical idea.
Well, as far as rules go, I'm more in favor with the philosophy that if you go back in time and change something, you don't create a divergent alternate reality. I like the idea of one reality.
Fuck quantum physics.
And every time you jump back into your present, things are inexplicably different. You're like, I now have memories of a time that does not exist anymore. So you haven't
that's more interesting.
You haven't set up. I find that more interesting because you suddenly have these displaced persons who are like,
it's way more romantic.
Man, I had a sister and a lover in my original timeline, and now I've gone back, fucked with something, gone forward again, and they don't exist. Like, oh dear. It's far more jarring and far more permanent. Like, you can never go back. Meddling with time will always have repercussions that cannot be erased. It's not like Back to the Future where you kind of jump back to that juncture point and set everything straight. Though
I do like
ultimately
that,
that's what you're trying to achieve, but like the heartbreaking thing about this kind of time travel is you can never do that. You can never get back to your original reality because that's just been kind of taped over, as it were.
Yeah. Like that, taped over. You should watch The Man in High Castle.
Yeah.
Man,
Getting high
I
in the
get so
sky.
high in the high castle. Whatever. Guys, new shit. I've been meaning to tell you about this for some time now because I am in a
Ooh.
bit of a quandary. Before I left Singapore, that's what it's called, I bought the shell of a ice saber.
Whoa.
Now it doesn't have the track treads, and it doesn't have the guns, but it's pretty much got everything else. I bought
How
it.
random for you. Sorry.
I got it for 10 Sing dollars, which is 100 Rand, which is nothing. And I bought it because my childhood ice saber, which I am enamored with, has always had its front tabs, the tabs that the skids slip into. It's always had those broken off.
Yeah.
I subsequently superglued it in place, and it's a perfectly workable fix. So now my quandary is I've got this shell and I don't have any fate for it. Like, what am I doing with this toy?
You're
Bart
gonna
would
do some
tell you to
crazy
customize it.
customizing.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Well, you know, Rob, this reminds me of why the ice saber was my go-to vehicle for our sort of sci-fi game when we
Yeah.
played.
It's so perfect.
It looks like some kind of science fiction hover vehicle, particularly with those giant kind of slatted fans or vents at the back. They look like they should be blowing some kind of force or energy or jet thrust downwards,
Yeah.
like forcing this thing into the sky. And the whole, like, the chassis, everything about it just looks sleek but you know, it's obviously it doesn't have wings, so it's not an aircraft, but it's got aircraft properties. It looks like a hovercraft or a flying car. And the kind of rotating cockpit thing, and the fact that it's so roomy, and you can kind of have characters like jump out of it and rappel down, or like deploy jet wings and fly away. Like, just made this the most fun kind of aerial assault platform.
Yeah.
So maybe I do need to do a kind of custom.
Yeah, scratch build it
Anyway,
into something.
$10. It was a
$10.
steal. Had to have it.
$10.
Yeah.
Chip for you.
Anyone else got
Paul?
some new shit they'd like to sink their teeth into?
No, not really. Actually.
Oh my goodness. Nothing
it's
new at
okay.
all.
Nothing new at all, and I'm okay.
You're okay with that? Well, I didn't get anything. Well, actually, I did kind of. So Stephen handed me some more of my childhood toys back to me.
Ooh.
But it included a Toy Biz Sabertooth. Because I think if you remember,
Bring
Stephen
back-
had to get 2 copies of his Sabertooth because his original had a snapped elbow. So yeah, now I own a broken. Well, he's not broken. He just can't bend his right arm, but his cool feature still works, and his eyes glow in the dark. What a cool feature!
I love the eyes glowing in the dark thing. It's great.
I never knew there was a thing until Stephen showed me. I was drunkenly in his bedroom. I was like, "Check out this, bro. His eyes in the dark.
I can actually see that
Spooky.
playing out.
He's in the dark. Look, he's doing with the light that he comes up with the darkness." And we were just blown away. We were just sitting there for like hours laughing. Or it might have been minutes. I don't know. When you're drunk, time
becomes a loop. I want to shout out Tim Wild for having me on his show. Thank you very much, Tim.
fantastic.
It's wonderful being interviewed by you because you were very insightful. And like, I feel like all the stuff that I never really have the forum to, in spite of the fact that this podcast is effectively my giant forum. But, you know, it feels indulgent to talk about like my collecting and, you know, how I'm going to do things differently and how I'm going to protect my toys from dust and whatnot. Like, he asks all the hard-hitting questions, and
All the hard questions.
I was
Hell
only
yeah!
so
So you've been
delighted
on a
to
real
be.
collecting bent recently, at least thinking about it philosophically. After
You
we were
know it.
on with Stu and you joined
And
Tim, talking more collection
nostalgically,
talking. Ooh.
Rob, you and I were both at my junior school, my
Yeah.
childhood school, and being on those grounds the other day. I mean, guys, we were there for a dance concert, a dance
Ooh.
show, my mother's
Wow.
studio show. So being on those grounds just brought back so many crazy memories. Like the one time I was playing with Nunchuck from the Ninja Force at break, and then the bell went back to class, realized his sword was missing, and actually asking the teacher, can I be let out of class so I can look for my toy sword? And she actually agreed to it. So there I was,
Nice.
just like, no hall pass needed. I just was left to my own devices, pottering around the school grounds looking for my sword. Man, those are the days, my friend. I never found it.
Oh, okay.
But,
I was about to ask.
Fortunately,
Sad end
it
to
was
the
one
story.
of those. No, well, the end is happy in the old end because, flash forward to whenever it was, 2017 or 18, and I have a parts list that I send to one of our benefactors out there. He comes back with the damn sword, man. Sent
Wild.
it my way. It probably actually was Mr. Shemansky of Quality Joe's. If
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
not
it was probably the exact same sword.
either
Picked it up at your
Dan
school.
or Greg Crocott. But yeah, thanks,
Hell
gentlemen, for sorting me out.
Sword mode.
Rob, do you have a loving scoopful from last week's chat?
I would have, but unfortunately with the
Oh.
power out, I don't know if I can actually look at YouTube while I'm here. So
In which case,
imagine
I'm
I
just going
said
to
something
flash
really
up a
cool.
Patreon honor roll. Thank you, gentlemen from the Berg Force and ladies. Persons.
People
Humans.
of the universe.
Berg
Ooh,
Force. Berg Force with you.
Berg Force.
And welcome to the madness. Anything else, gents, before we
Sky
head
in
on
the
out?
sky in the castle. I'm good. I'm good.
I'm good too. I'm
glad this
rocking.
worked out. Like, I'm glad I could come back. This is actually a lot of fun. Although my back's starting to hurt, so I'm glad we're ending now.
No doubt, man. Well, look, the next time we record, I mean, touch wood and
I
all
will
that.
check load shedding. Absolutely. I'm going to make sure there's power.
We will all be in each other's company. So even if it means we're recording
Even if the load
on
shedding
a
happens,
cell
we at
phone
least keep each other company.
dictaphone app, we will be together this time next week. Amazing.
Hell yeah.
I feel like I should bring my
Paul,
mobile
drive
router with me.
safe.
You will do
You
that.
can bring your mobile power supply.
Dude, I can. It's not big, eh? And it's designed for camping, so it's quite portable.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So we can actually set up a tent in the yard and record podcast in a tent.
Paul's
Yeah,
asking
we
me
can.
like what he should bring us from Joburg. And I just said like power and a good
Power.
laptop, please.
Yeah, well, I will be
Oh,
bringing my
jeez.
laptop with as well. So
Hell yeah.
Ooh, amazing. Yep. Just
Yeah.
don't
Well-
have high hopes for the Wi-Fi down here. My parents' house is like a cave.
no, that's
In
why
the
I
high
haven't
tower.
that's why I'm
I
thinking
am
of
very
bringing my
excited.
mobile router.
Hell yeah. I'm
So-
very excited for 276. Boys back together again. Boys to men.
766. Come on.
See you next week, everybody. Yo, Joburg.
Joburg. Yo, Joburg in the sky. High in the castle. Joburg. Joburg. Check it out.